Hey, well, welcome back to another episode of 10 with Tom. My name is Tom, and this is where we explore faith 10 minutes at a time. Today, we're talking about why motivation is overrated. Thanks for joining us for another episode. The last 2 weeks, Wayne has actually been handling 10 with Tom for me. I've been away, so it hasn't been 10 with Tom, it's been 1 with Wayne. And I loved it. If you missed it, catch up. I love his new sign out, which is have a nice life. So I think that's going to be the new sign up for 10 with Tom. Have a nice life. No. But I really am excited to share with you again. And I don't have too much to say today, but I was just kind of struck in my quiet time the other day. I was reading from, it's John chapter 15. And Jesus is speaking about, I am the vine and you are the branches, about this idea of abiding in Him. And that word abiding is not like a common word that we use, but it literally means to remain in Him. And I just want to read to you right up front what He says. He says, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. He says, remain in me, and as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. You must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And this fruit idea is kind of picked up in other places in the scriptures. We talk about, in Christian world, we talk about the fruits of the Spirit. And it's patience and self-control and kindness and gentleness. And these are beautiful characteristics that ultimately what it means to follow Jesus is to have the fruit of the Spirit operating in our lives. And the thing that I kind of realized was that I actually can't produce that on my own, because I know, like, I'm pretty impatient. I'm not the kindest person. Like, there's so many things I have to work on, and I think it's easy to get into like a loop where you think, well, I've got to just try be kind, or I've got to work harder to be more patient. And I've just found that to be excuse the pun, but like a fruitless exercise. You can't motivate or willpower your way into being a better person. Willpower is so overrated. It's so fleeting. Our emotions go up and down. Like, if we're waiting for us to be like excited and motivated to, eat well, or to go for a run, or to, do better, I just find that that's a very, very weak force. And it's something I read somewhere, but it kind of struck me that, see, my job is not to will my way to be a better person. Rather, my job is to use my limited willpower to actually put myself into environments, spaces, or you could call them spiritual practices, that allow me to encounter the Spirit. And then it's the Spirit of God that actually produces the fruit. It produces patience and kindness and gentleness and self-control. And so it's less about me trying to be those things and more about me practicing certain practices that, and they'll look different for different people, but there are kind of age-old traditions, things like meditation and mindfulness, things like reading the scriptures, things like silence and solitude. These are practices that have been practiced by Christians for hundreds, thousands of years, and what they do is they allow us to connect with God. And I think in a world that is so distracted, that is always moving at pace, and maybe I'm just speaking on my own life, feels like I'm always running between one thing, to take the time to actually pause, to sit, to reflect, to connect with God, whether that's out in nature, whether that's with a cup of coffee and your journal, whatever that looks like. What that does is it allows the Holy Spirit to then begin to do the work of producing the fruit that I so long for in my life. Because I long to be more patient with my kids. I long to be more kind, but I can't do that on my own. It's what Jesus says. Only when we're connected to the vine can we produce fruit. A branch cannot produce fruit. If you cut off a branch and put it on the ground, it will never produce any fruit. But when that branch is grafted into the vine, then somehow that branch produces fruit. And so our job is not to produce fruit or try harder, come on, try, but rather to just stay connected to the vine. And when we do that, when we remain and when we practice those disciplines, which is a way of remaining, of abiding, then somehow we find ourselves producing much fruit, as Jesus promises: patience, kindness, self-control, gentleness, love, all these things, which really are the mark of a Christian, and really the mark of what we look for in other people. When you like someone or think someone's a great person, it's not because they go to church or follow all the rules or jump through all the religious hoops. It's because they were kind to you. It's because they listened to you. It's because they stopped and helped you. It's because they showed up at your door and brought you a meal. And those things are actually the mark. It's the heart that Jesus sees. And so, again, we can't do that on our own. But what we can do is place ourselves in positions where we are likely to encounter God, and then God does that work in us. Remain in me, abide in him, and the promise is you will produce fruit and much fruit. And so I hope that's helpful. I don't know if that's 10 with Tom or if that's 4.5 with Tom, 6. So I think we're just going to wait here now and let the 10-minute timer roll out so we get our YouTube algorithms going. No. Thank you so much for joining us for 10 with Tom, and I hope this has been helpful. And I encourage you this week to find some space to connect with God in your own way, and let's see what fruit God produces in your life. Have a great day.